Good morning to everyone watching our YouTube channel. Absolutely delighted today to have the wonderful Sam Blake with me for a discussion on how to write your book. So Sam is a best-selling author, and The Dark Room is her latest novel, which is out at the moment. And I'll hand you over to Sam to say a quick hello and to introduce herself.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Rachel. It's really lovely to be here. I am a crime writer. I write a mixture of series books. So my first three books were the Kat Connolly series that kicked off with Little Bones, and they're detective fiction. And then I also write psychological thrillers, standalones, which are the most recent one is The Dark Room, as you mentioned there, and Keep Your Eyes on Me was just before that. I have another book coming out in January, and we've just did a cover reveal today, in fact, of a spiderweb book, which is a book coming out, it's a digital exclusive, and it's coming out on the 22nd of September, and it's called High Pressure, and it links the Kat Connolly series with the standalones.
Very good. And what do you mean when you say digital only?
So it's literally it's going to be digital only, and it's on Kindle. It's not going to be a print book. So it'll be in digital and audio. Okay,
audio. And do you do the audio yourself?
No, I have a girl called Belinda and my audio publishers, and Aoife McMahon is an actress who is amazing, does the audiobooks.
Brilliant. So can you see the future then in a lot of the digital books and the audiobooks? What's your opinion on where they're going?
I think it's a great space. It's a brilliant space for authors because you can get books out there really fast. And it's great because people have it gives people different options in terms of reading devices. So my eldest child's just gone off to Sweden to the Arctic Circle to study rocket building, and has taken a Kindle with them. They would read like hundreds of books, and the Kindle is perfect because they can just stack them up. Whereas other people might prefer a print book, and I completely understand that. I have a mixture. I love having the Kindle app on the phone, and then if I can't sleep, if I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can use the phone to read a book without having to put the light on or whatever. So it's so it's horses for courses, I think.
Very good. So if we went back a bit in time then, I suppose I'm always interested in a bit about your life before you were a published author. Maybe you tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so I'm one of these people that always wanted to write a book and always thought I would, but didn't really, I suppose, solidify the thought too much. And then in about 1999, my husband went sailing across the Atlantic for 8 weeks. I didn't have any kids, and I hadn't been in Ireland. I'd been in Ireland a few years, but not like a massive length of time. And I had it was in November, I had long dark evenings to fill, and I had an idea for a book. So I thought, well, now's the time to start writing it. And I literally wrote it out longhand. And then in the evenings, the weekends, I didn't have a computer at home. I went into the office, and I was working for an event management company at the time. And I'd type it up on the computer that I had there. And then when he got back, he bought me a laptop for Christmas. And that was really the last time he saw me in the evenings. So it really started there. And I think the bug just bit that feeling of when you sit down to write and you look at the clock, and then when you look back at the clock, it's 4 hours later, and you haven't had any sense of the time passing. That's a wonderful feeling when you really get into that flow, and I think that's what I loved about it. And I just kept going, just kept writing. And the best advice I was ever given was by Sarah Webb, and she said, just keep writing.
Keep writing, yeah. That's come up now a few times. Such simple but good advice. So go back. So if we went back then, so you had the laptop, which was a lovely gift and a very practical one.
Indeed.
To start writing. So how did you then go about to getting published? What were the next steps for you?
Well, it was quite a long road, I think. I suppose the first thing I did was make all the rookie mistakes. So I finished that first manuscript, put the last full stop down, and then sent it everywhere, like all over the world. Write an artist yearbook, next to me, and literally sent it out. And needless to say, it was rejected absolutely everywhere, and rightly so, because it should never have gone out at that stage. It was far too raw. It was literally a first draft. Now, when I'm writing a first draft, I consider that to be like a hot mess. That's the thing where we find the story. It's not anything anybody should ever see. Made all the mistakes, sent it out. But I was completely convinced that I would get published, and that the only way to do it was to keep going. So while I was sending that first one out, I had an idea for a second book, and so I wrote that. That I think it wasn't a fully developed idea, perhaps. So okay, but it was about 70,000 words. The first one would have been 100, I'd say. And then I had an even better idea for a third book. So this was actually with a serious character at the time. But I suppose I just kept going, and I kept sending out. The third book did get interest from a fabulous editor called Cody in Townhouse Country House. And she did, I can still remember it now, she sent it out to readers, and the readers sent back reports on the book. I suppose at that stage I'd written 3, so I was 300 words, 1,000 words better off than I was when I started. And she could see that I had a voice and it was starting to come through, but it needed a lot of work. And I'll never forget that first reader's report. It was very illuminating, let's just say. So there was a lot of work that still needed to be done. And at that point, I knew I needed to do a course because I needed to improve the writing. But my husband was in the Guards, and trying to get out, and I had 2 small children, so trying to get out, and no family here for babysitting, so getting out of the house was just a drama. So in the end, I decided that I really wanted to do intensive one-day fiction writing workshops on a Saturday when I could go. He only had to look after the children for one day, and it was you could manage that. So I'd set up my own company. I set up Inkwell, and just at that point I'd met Sarah Webb, I'd mentioned before, and sort of tapped into her network, I suppose, and started meeting people, and set up one-day intensive fiction writing workshops, which was exactly what I needed. Wow. And as it turned out, bizarrely, there were an awful lot of other people in my same situation, so they became really popular, far more bigger and than I ever expected. Wow. And then really from there, Writing.ie grew. So while I was doing all of that, I was keeping writing. So it's a long story. But,
that's incredible. I didn't know that now, actually. Because I was going to ask you how it all came about in terms of the Writing.ie. So sort of similar to myself in the sense that you went through the process and identified something that other authors might be looking for because you needed it yourself. So it came from that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, really, when I set up Inkwell, I only did it for me. I mean, it was completely just down to what I needed and what I wanted. I wanted to hear from best-selling authors, and I wanted to have a really nice day out. And we used to meet in the Killiney Castle Hotel, and it was a proper conference. I was working in event management, as mentioned before, so I was very proficient at organising conferences. We'd have a lovely lunch with the authors. It was great. It was a fantastic day. And but it worked really well. And then Writing.ie grew out of that because I discovered the domain was available. And I had this Inkwell newsletter that I used to send out, which was, had a big mailing list. And literally I'd hit send on it, and somebody would email me and say, did you know about this competition, or did you know about this festival, or whatever? And I didn't. And I thought, well, if I don't know about it, and I'm the one who's scouring the internet for this information, then there's an awful lot of other stuff out there that people don't know about. And that's really how Writing.ie came about. It was like the Inkwell newsletter, but in a website. So that grew from there. And then in between the jigs and the reels, I had run an awful lot of getting published workshops, and I was getting to the stage where I was placing other people's manuscripts quite proficiently with different publishers and different agents who I'd met. And I suppose I talked to lots of people, and it was all going great. And then I met an agent from Curtis Brown, who was my first agent, and we tried sending various books out and various bits, happened, but nothing really landed. And then we parted company, and I met up with my existing agent, Simon Sherwin, who I had scouted for and had landed some quite big books with him. And we were having coffee one day in Covent Garden, and he said to me, I had a copy of Alex Barkley's book, one of Alex's books, on the table with me, because I picked it up as I was going out the front door to the airport. And he said, do you read Alex? And I said, oh yeah, she's very influential on my writing. And he went, oh, do you write? And somewhere in the jigs and the reels between doing the scouting and running the events and everything, it never occurred to him. I'd never mentioned that, actually. I wrote books too. And I said, I've written this police procedural called Little Bones. And it's about this guard called Cat Conley who finds the bones of a baby hidden in the hem of a wedding dress. And he was like, oh, I'd like to read that. And literally hounded me all day. When's it coming? When's it coming? And I thought, I hadn't looked at Little Bones at that point for quite some time. And I thought, oh no, I've got to send this to him. And like, my entire reputation could be shot down here if it's rubbish. And he doesn't like it. And here I am trying to pitch ideas to this, and new authors to this huge agent. He was the lead partner in WME at the time, which is a global talent organization started out of New York and LA. And So it was like, oh my God. So anyway, I thought I'd better read it. So I went back home and I read the whole manuscript beginning to end, and then thought, actually, it's not too bad. And I'd forgotten what happened at the end, actually, that's how long since I'd last looked at it, and sent it off to him, and he loved it, and he landed it with Bonnier, who were just setting up at the time, and it was great. It was really, really exciting.
Wow. So how long then, Vanessa, in terms of timeline from when you first did the manuscript to that point in time where it actually then did get published?
For Little Bones, bearing in mind that was my 5th book, and I would say it was probably, I actually, do you know something? Now you said I could check back the dates from when I had the idea. I haven't ever done that, but I had the idea driving back from the airport. Sarah Webb and I had organised a reader's day at a hotel at the airport. And I was coming back and I heard this story on the news about a playwright who had left all his plays on his bed in the suitcase, and it connected with a suitcase that I'd heard about in a documentary. And so by the time I got back from the airport, I had this idea for the wedding dress and the bones and the whole lot. But I can't remember when that was exactly. So I'd say the book was probably 3 to 5 years in the writing.
Okay.
As I say, I can go back. I will go back and check that date now you said it. So it didn't come out until 2016, and it was sitting around for probably a year before Simon saw it. And then I would say it took at least 3 years to write. Yeah, to get it really right. I really, and when I started it, I thought it was going to be, I didn't know it was going to be, I knew it was going to be crimey because obviously there's bones, but I didn't realize it was going to be a police procedural. It wasn't until I realized, I started writing sort of chapters to get myself into the story, if you like. So I wrote chapters from this character in it called Lavinia, who is in fact dead when we meet her. But I'd written the lead up chapters to that happening, and I wrote some other chapters. And then I realised that we didn't have a story unless somebody was there to find the bones. And that's really when Kat Connolly just literally burst in. She literally walked in the door, she parked a Mini outside, and she was on the scene. And that was when the series took off.
Okay. Wow. So, I mean, it's really been a long journey for you.
Very long, much longer than some people. Long time. Yeah, I'm a 15-year overnight success.
15 years?
Yeah, from 1999 when I started to 2016.
Yeah, wow.
Came out.
That's a really good message for other people, though. Yeah. I think, and that's, that definitely, because you kind of started the conversation saying that you were just going to keep writing and keep going, and to do that over that period of time, to now be in a position where, you very much are recognized as a bestseller in your particular genre. And you've also built out this, incredible business with Writing.ie and Inkwell, that kind of support other authors going through it. So, it lets other people know that, it might take time, but eventually then things do fall into place.
Definitely. I think it's hard because you tend to think, because it's your baby and you're putting all your heart and soul into each book, that it's very hard to accept that maybe the first book you write isn't going to be the one that gets published. But you have to learn the craft, and that's the thing we all forget, I think, because we've done, I did a degree in history and English and business and whatnot, and I've been writing creatively for a long time, and we all speak English, we all read, so you think, it should be relatively simple to get these words on the page. But to get a book to a commercial standard, to get a story that's really going to hook your reader, that a marketing department can get behind, that an agent can pitch, that takes time, and it's that apprenticeship that's so important, I think. But every word you write moves you forwards. Nothing is wasted. I've just started a book recently that I'm probably going to park and start a new one. And although I feel, it's happened to a few authors, I know, actually, I think it's probably a pandemic thing. But none of it's wasted. It'll come out, you use it again, or it'll spawn another idea. I did a thing called Writers Web TV years ago, with a company, a venture capitalist company, who wanted to set up internet workshops. And so we actually set up a TV set, and we interviewed people and did loads of bits and pieces. But one of the things that we did through that was really sort of, I suppose, talking to people and getting to know what their stories were, and building and really understanding the fact that, it is an apprenticeship, and it can be a long road. But it's really worth it. You just have to stick with it, because you get better every time. You really do. Literally nothing's wasted. It's all part of that process.
Yeah, no, that's such good advice. And I've heard that recently from an author, letting one book go allowed her to open in a new book. But if she hadn't let it go, she would have been almost stuck.
That's it. Well, this is it. I remember interviewing Monica on Writers Over TV, Monica McInerney, and she said she's a very organic writer. I'm a bit of a planner, so I do a planning. I'm half planning and half organic these days. But she's very organic, so she literally just sits down and writes and finds the story as she goes. And she said she'd written 40,000 words that she had to park. But in that 40,000, which is like half a book, so that's like, oh my God. But in that 40,000 words, there was one paragraph of absolute gold, which she would never have found if she hadn't written those words. So I think it depends on your approach, but you definitely, you will find it'll take you somewhere else. Whatever you write will take you on to the next stage. And that's important to remember.
Because you mentioned something there, which is so true. A lot of with writing is finding your voice. Yes. And you find that through practice, and you find that through writing words. And even though you might not see those words published, it's helping you find your voice. Yeah, it's crucial, because that's what publishers are looking for. They're looking for something unique and something different. We don't need more J.K. Rowling. We don't need more Stephen King. We need you. We need your voice. And in the same way that I sound completely different to you when we're talking here, or I always use the radio as the best analogy. So if you heard Amy Winehouse and Adele singing the same song, you'd know one was Amy Winehouse and one was Adele. And it's the same on the page. You can pick up a Lee Child book and you can recognize Lee Child's style. You can pick up John Banville and you will recognize John Banville's style. And that voice that comes through on the page is really, really important. And that's what readers begin to identify with, and they feel comfortable when they pick up your book. So what would your advice be then to other authors or writers who are in the early stages in terms of developing that voice?
I think just keep at it. You'll know when you found your voice when you stop worrying about the words on the page and you're just focusing on the story. So the writing becomes much more naturally. You'll also know when you start writing, you tend to unconsciously mimic what you're reading. So a lot of writers say, "Oh, well, I don't read when I write because I'm mimicking." I remember writing and I was channeling Lee Child on the page, and it worked for him, but obviously didn't work for me. So it's really important to develop your own style and be comfortable. And I think that's what, when you're comfortable, when you aren't picking up on other influences, when you're just sitting down to write and focusing on the story, then you found your voice. But it does take time. It can take. Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours being the tipping point for very successful sportsmen and bands, and he did a lot of research on that. And I think there is a 10,000 hour tipping point with writing too. I meet writers who've been writing for ages, and then suddenly they start to win competitions, or they start to get placed, or things start to happen, and they're hitting their tipping point, and that's the time to really then start to really get your work out there.
So hard work pays off.
It totally does. And it is an apprenticeship. You would, like you say, you wouldn't expect somebody to come and plumb your house. Somebody today to say to you today, "Oh, I'm going to be a plumber, so we'll come and plumb my house." Well, in the same way with a writer, you wouldn't expect, "Well, I've written a book and let's get it out there straight away." It's going to hit Penguin as the biggest book that they've ever bought. So you want to, you need to keep at it.
And how do you see then that the courses through Writing.ie or Inkwell, how do they help, I suppose, an author in terms of that development? There's a lot to be said about getting together in a group and, maybe you talk us through a bit about that, how those kind of courses work.
Yeah. So everybody's different and everybody has different needs. Some people can do courses and find them really, really useful. And I suppose the key thing about a course is that it's going to teach you the basics of fiction writing technique. And those are things that you aren't taught in school. So it's the things like showing, not telling, how to write good dialogue, how to, develop location, how to pace a book, structure, things like that. And those techniques are absolutely vital to understand to be able to deliver a really great story. But if you're not a course person or you can't get access to one, I find listening to other authors incredibly valuable. Literally every time I interview an author or I listen to an author talk, I learn something new. I did a big series for Writing.ie when we went into lockdown the first time last year. Myself and my agent Simon Sherwin decided we needed to do something just to save our sanity, and so we on a Friday lunchtime we set up this thing called Winning the Writing Game, and we interviewed I think 30 or 40 different authors every Friday afternoon, going right the way through lockdown, and people like Andrew Miller, who's a Costa winner, Joanne Harris, who wrote Chocolat, Adele Parks, who is a multi-million bestseller, just incredible authors. It's all recorded, it's all on YouTube, and Writing.ie Facebook page. It's all free to watch. But literally every single time, in every interview, there was something they said where I went, oh wow, that's incredible, and we said it, we went, oh my goodness, that's gold. And literally you learn, and that's building, I think, that knowledge bank, and understanding their process is really useful. And listening to them is really good, because they've made all the mistakes. So, how do they do it? How can you take, for me, it's like I listen and I'm thinking, well, how can I take what they do and mold it into my process? Can I take a bit of how Adele Parks plans, or actually most of my planning was stolen from Alex Barkley. So, how can I take what Alex does and then meld that into something that I do that's going to work for me? And so developing your process is as much as important, I think, as developing your voice. The two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, I know that's so true. As in, there is always a technical side, as you said, and that can be taught through the courses. And then on the creative side, that's almost through practice. And yeah, I find that myself talking to authors, which we're also doing. It's incredible how every conversation is a different takeaway.
Totally is, yeah. And everybody's different, and we all. And it's amazing because we all write in completely different ways, and we all, some of us plot, some of us plan, some of us start with character. For me, character and location are really important, as important as the plot. I mean, I love a complex, twisty plot that's going to surprise you. But those things are really, really important, and you're learning and literally listening to what people are saying. It just helps inform you and develop your own stories.
And in terms of then, it's come up a few times, I suppose, if you have a really good book, as you said there, with a good plot, with a twist at the end, is getting your book onto the screen ever something you've considered?
Absolutely, yeah. I sold. We had a TV option for the Cat Connolly books, and I can film. My agent has a film wing, has a film agent that he works with. So no, absolutely, they're going out all the time. I mean, things are optioned all the time. Whether they get to the screen is a different thing altogether. I was talking to Caroline Grace Cassidy last night, who has writes. She's just written a brilliant book called The Unexpected Love Life of Lexi Byrne, age 39 3/4, I think, or half. It's one of those titles that you need to have written down in front of you. But she runs a film company too, so she does a lot of options. She options her own work, but obviously she does too. And that's what we were talking about. And lots and lots of things are optioned, but whether they actually get to the screen is a whole different. There's a lot of processes. You might explain to us, what does that mean when it's optioned? Okay, so an option is when a film company or TV company, usually a production company, basically pays you in the same way that a publisher is buying your book, is buying the rights in order to publish the book from you. A film company does the same thing. So they buy the option, they buy the rights, usually for a limited period of time. So the Cat Connolly books might have been optioned for, say, 3 years. And they pay you a certain amount of money, which is the initial option payment. And then they have to renew that, and they keep paying you over and over and over again if they want to hold on to the option. And in that option, then the contracts are very, very detailed. Just to say to people, if anybody is in a situation where they get a publishing contract of any sort, please don't sign it unless you've had advice, whether it's TV, whether it's film, whether it's book, whatever. It's vital, because there are so many clauses in there that can massively impact your income and your work, that you are not going to even understand, and your solicitor, your local solicitor, isn't going to understand it either. So the Society of Authors, I'm on the board of the Society of Authors, of the Union for Writers in the UK, have a free service for members where they will look at contracts. They've got 4 agents who work with them all the time, who look at members' contracts and will explain what they mean and negotiate them and do the various bits and pieces. So that's really important. So in your film option contract, your initial one, you would have a really detailed contract which breaks down what happens if this gets sold, in certain circumstances. And usually there's all sorts of clauses in there, like gives you then further options to get involved in the actual production of the thing or not. So they're quite complex documents, but that's essentially it, a film option. Quite and as I say, things are optioned all the time, but that doesn't mean they're going to get made, because they need to have. If you think the publishing world is hard, the film world is even more. It's even harder, because there are so many hoops you have to go through. When you send a book to an agent loves it and they send it to the publisher and the publisher loves it. It's quite a simple process, relatively speaking. But in the film world, they've got to get production companies on board, they've got to get the money, they've got a cast, and then they've got, there's such a long process. So a lot can go wrong along the way.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know anyway, because I definitely know there's some incredible books out there with great stories, and I suppose there is that thing where especially if you're self-published, how do you kind of get it out there?
I think the Alliance of Independent Authors, who are a UK-based organisation, I think they have a film agent attached to them, and they definitely have foreign rights agents, or always used to anyway. I haven't have to get up to date with what they're doing now, what Warner's up to, but they're great. So check in with them. Okay,
brilliant. Thanks for that. So another question I have, just in terms of writing your book, so it's a term that comes up quite a bit, in terms of writer's block. What's your, I suppose, advice to someone who has writer's block?
Okay, so there can be two reasons for writer's block. One can be our prevailing conditions, and I talked a lot about this at the start of lockdown. When you're anxious about something, it's very hard to write because anxiety stifles creativity. Now, it might not be that you're anxious about a pandemic or a global nuclear war, but it could be that you're anxious about actually getting the book out there and getting published. And so that can stifle creativity and can cause a block. So in that instance, I always say to people, don't even think about getting published. When you write a book, when you're writing that first draft, or even I was just actually going through drafts yesterday. I was looking for something and I discovered I had 6 printed drafts of the book I wrote called No Turning Back. I changed the ending really radically, but usually I only have 1 printed draft. When I'm writing, I'll go over it like maybe 6 or 7 times before it goes to my agent, but there'll be 1 printed version, which is the one that, I make changes to. And there were 6 for that. So don't even think about what's going to happen to this book until you've got to the end of the process. You might have I think Little Bones might have been redrafted 30 times. You've worked on it and worked on it. You're so sick of it, you never want to see it ever again. So that's the time when you want to really send it out. So first off, if anxiety is what's stifling your creativity, forget about whatever it is that's in that process that you're worrying about. Just write the book, because it's about the story, and the story will never come if you're worrying about who's going to publish it. You don't need to be thinking about that yet. You don't need to think about anything to do with that yet. So that's the first thing. The other thing that can happen is that when you're writing, if you take a wrong turn when you're writing, your subconscious mind can stop you. I'm an absolutely firm believer that your subconscious mind does all the work. That's where the magic happens. That's where the story develops and where it grows. And certainly when you look back at a book, so like a book like No Turning Back, there I changed the ending. When I had the idea about the new ending, when I went back into the book, I discovered actually there were lots of breadcrumbs already in the story which were leading towards this new ending, but I just hadn't thought of the new ending. So part of my mind knew that things were going to change. Nearly, that's what it felt like when I went back to it. So bear in mind that if your subconscious mind, if you do something wrong, it could be a character says something out of character, it could be something that happens that couldn't happen at that time. You could have messed up your timeline and have a bomb going off in Nicaragua when it couldn't possibly, because the person that set it actually is in New York. Whatever the thing is that you've done that you haven't spotted, your subconscious mind will put the brakes on and say, hey, look, just stop, go back to where it was working, and go back to the bit where everything was okay, and then see what you did wrong, because usually there's something that needs to be tweaked or changed or whatever that'll then unblock you and you can go forward. In my book in Deep Water, which was the second Cat Connolly book, I got really stuck and went back to where it was working and realized I'd made a mistake before that. So I went back to where the first mistake was and discovered actually I'd made a previous error. The character had said something they couldn't know or something I can't even remember now. So it was a double whammy, and my head was very much putting the brakes on at that point. So that can be the other reason. So so anxiety, and quite often because you're putting yourself under too much pressure to do anything, but also your subconscious mind saying, look, stop, you've done something wrong here, go back to where it was working.
Yeah, that's great advice, because I've never heard that before, where almost it's writer's block is like a red flag for you.
Oh, totally. For me, it's absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that. And everybody I've ever spoken to, like I've worked with an awful lot of authors, talking to somebody on Thursday actually who's got problems with their plot, and she's like, don't know what to do, I don't know what's going, and just literally talking it through. We'll find out what's wrong and work out what bits need to be, maybe moved around or exaggerated, or how she can develop it. And that'll hopefully help.
And the other piece of advice you had there, which I think is really good, is when you're writing, just focus on the writing. Don't worry about anything else, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. You absolutely have no idea what can happen. It's a very strange business. You might send out a short story in 6 months' time and it lands, and an agent be ringing you looking for the book. So, and actually that's what happened to Stuart Neville. Stuart Neville wrote a story for a book, for a website called Thuglit, which was a short story website. And he just wrote he had a dream actually, and wrote the short story, and then he was starting to write it into a book, and a New York agent called Nat Sabel read it and literally rang him up and said, have you got a book? And he went, when he picked himself up off the floor, yes. And that book became The Ghosts of Belfast, which was published as a 12 here initially, and it won the LA Crime Award. It was a spectacular book, and he was completely picked up from a random short story. So you don't know. So there's no point worrying now about how you're going to get your book out there, because anything can happen. Great advice. So I just want to ask you as well, I'm intrigued with how you balance both managing Writing.ie and your Inkwell with your own writing, because they're two very separate things. And I'm struggling a bit with that myself at the moment. I'm interested to know, do you kind of split your time between them both? Do you like block off times where, you switch off everything for your writing? Is there particular times in the year that work better for you, or how do you do both?
Well, I manage it fairly badly, to be honest. But I do that. I block stuff off. So I would have, because I'm writing to deadline generally. So and I know how long it takes me to do a first draft. So it usually takes me, I write quite fast. When I know what the story is, I write quite fast. So I can do a first draft in about 3 months. And so I know that's how long it's going to take me. Too much time is a dangerous thing, because you tend not to do anything. So that's tricky. But when I am focused, I tend to be a very focused person. So I would have across the day, I would have bits where I would blast at different things. And generally they're all sort of interrelated in some shape or form. But if it's writing, then the writing takes priority. And I try and get that done first. And I try and write, I aim in my head, this is where it all goes a bit bonkers, but I aim in my head to write 1,000 words a day. So I really want, when I am physically writing, to be coming out at the end of the week with 5,000 words, let's say. It doesn't work like that sometimes. Some weeks I don't get near the computer, and therefore I spend the weekends writing. In fact, when I'm writing every single day, so I would be very mumuch the weekends. I might write to try and catch up, and then write 3, 5, 7,000 words over a weekend. So it's a bit unpredictable, it has to be said. I interviewed Joanne Harris there, who wrote Chocolat the other day, and a while ago, and she writes 300 words a day. So she sits down, she's a full-time writer, and she just aims to write 300 words a day. And I think that is genius, because if you write 300 words a day, you end up with a book at the end of it. But 300 words is really easy. There's no pressure. Hazel Gaynor is actually the same. She says she just sits down for 5 minutes to see what happens. And because she's a busy life too, and 2 boys that she's shuttling backwards and forwards to soccer and all the rest of it. And if she sits down for 5 minutes, usually that 5 minutes grows. But it means then that she's I suppose giving herself the out, if you like. Same with Joanne. Once the 300 words are done, then everything else after that's a bonus. If you sit down to yourself, and even it doesn't matter how busy you are, you'll always find a little bit of time in the day to write 300 words. So I think that's just it's one of those. I think there are lots of things in writing where you need to have that positive attitude. You need to go in with the right mindset, if you like. And a big part of that is actually being able to setting yourself achievable objectives. And so the 300 words to me is great. But finding time to write is hard for everybody. And I think that's one of the things that snags people. And you do have to give up something else. I don't watch television. I very rarely read magazines or newspapers. So there's always something that has to go. When the kids were little, I used to have my laptop with me all the time. And I remember sitting in Tesco car park or the Killarney Castle Hotel car park with one child asleep in the back while I was waiting to go and pick up the other one. And if you get 20 minutes free time with one child asleep, then you write. So it's literally, you steal time from everywhere.
No, if you really want to, you'll find the time. I suppose, in some ways. And I suppose the final question I kind of have then with this really good conversation is around your involvement with the On Post Book Awards, which is fantastic. So you're involved in the short story competition.
Yeah. Writing.ie sponsors the short story of the year. And that's open to any story that's published during the period. So it can be published online or it can be published in a magazine. And it's fantastic. I'm all about new writers and giving people an opportunity. And we've had a real mixture of writers. So we've had some completely new writers who maybe haven't written for years and have sent in a short story and it's got published somewhere. And then it's ended up being shortlisted. And they can be with people like John Boyne and Colin McCann and Colin Tabine and, the really heavyweight writers. So it's great. Yeah, it's very,
brilliant.
I love it.
And are you involved in the judging side?
So no, I try and take a step back from that because obviously I know a lot of the people whose short stories will be there. So I do a lot of judging competitions, but it has to be done anonymously. And I would be. It is all done anonymously, but it's I will always worry in case I recognise something. Yeah, so I have a panel of judges who judge the long list. We create a long list, and they judge that, and that's how we end up with a short list, which then the public vote on. So it's very much a public vote. The idea is that it's very open for people to vote for the one they like best.
No, it's a great recognition. Held at the end of the year, I think. So what would you be looking in other competitions that you judge? What would you be looking for when you're reading either a short story or some submission? What kind of stands out for you?
Okay, so for short stories, I like a circular story. So a short story is very much a snapshot of something, of somebody's life or whatever it is, the world that you see. And so I suppose you want an experience. You want to be completely immersed in that story for the time that you're reading it and completely absorbed. And I like it to be circular, so that your opening line in a short story is absolutely as important as your finishing line. And the title again is something very important. It's a complete piece, if you like. So that's what I'm looking for. In novels, because I do a lot of scouting, not at the moment because I'm a bit busy, but I scout. I would be always looking for two things. You're looking for voice and confidence on the page, and then the hook. So you're looking for something where you want to keep reading, where it's something that's really original. Andrew Miller, we did an interview with Andrew Miller last year, and he said that certainly for a debut novel, I think it was a great phrase, it needs to be original and fresh. So it might be that you've taken a scenario that's quite common, I'd say bank robbery or, an adoption in the 50s or whatever it might be, something that's quite common in literature, in Irish literature, but your take on it needs to be original and fresh. So you need to have a unique angle that hasn't been done before, that's bringing something new to the page. So that's really important. But yeah, confidence on the page, and just you can always tell, I can always tell, everybody can tell whether something is an early draft or whether it's been really polished, and where the person is in their writing career. So sometimes I might read something and I know it needs another 6 months work, or it needs another 2 years work, or whatever. And you get that from experience, just reading different bits and pieces. I do a big event. I don't know if we're going to be doing it next year now. Everything's changed now with this pandemic, but it was called Date with an Agent. So we did, I think, 5 or 6 years of that, where we opened to submissions, and I brought in 5 agents from the UK, and then I read all the submissions, and then matched the submissions with the agents. So if people were going through to meet the agents, they just had like a 15-minute speed date with them, but it was a great opportunity. And I read them all, and so I read an awful lot of manuscripts, and we were getting up to like 500 for each year. And there are things when you read that many, and this is the same with agents, for anybody who's looking for an agent or just submitting directly to publishers, they're getting so many manuscripts. Yours has to stand out. It can't be like something that somebody else has already read or something that's already written. It needs to really stand out, and whether that's down to a fantastic character or a really brilliant hook in terms of plot or whatever it is, you need to make sure that it's different. Yeah.
And is there a book that particularly stood out for you this year?
This year, in terms of writing, other people's writing, a couple actually I really loved. I loved Catherine Ryan-Howard's 56 Days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just come out yesterday here. Stunning.
Yeah.
Olivia Kiernan's Murder Box is one of the best police procedurals I've ever read. There is a twist at the end of that, which I think is absolute genius.
Mm-hmm.
Really is. So clever. I'm just even now I'm thinking, God, it's so clever. It's one of the, I think any story where it is an absolute no-brainer, where you're like, oh God, why didn't I think of that? That to me is a genius story.
Mm-hmm.
Andrea Marr has written a book called All Her Fault that has just a brilliant ending. There's a couple of twists at the end, and particularly the very last page, I just thought was just so sweet. Yeah, so those are ones they've been standout ones for me.
Brilliant.
Yeah, they're great. Really, some really good. There's some brilliant Irish writers out there. I mean, it really is. And they're all authors who are, like Andrea. She had I think she had 3 books with Poolbeg, and now she's moved to Transworld, and she's getting better. You're literally getting better with every book. But I'm the same. I'm hoping that I'm getting better with every book. The Dark Room is a very different type of book to say Little Bones. Obviously, Little Bones is a police procedure, but you're trying to push each time and be better.
No, definitely. I think we've had such a lovely conversation. I appreciate all your guidance. I mean, as you said, at some point, 15 years, I think people will take a lot from that in terms of, I can just tell you have serious determination, which is so important, I think, in this industry. I think you said at the very start you had a belief, and you obviously worked on your talent, and indirectly now you've helped so many people with setting up Inkwell and Writing.ie to help them along. So where can people find out more? Both Sam Blake author, I think, has a Facebook page.
So I'm Sam Blake Books on social everywhere. Okay. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So just look for Sam Blake Books. And I'm building my Facebook page at the moment, so I have a lot of fun on there. So if you're into Facebook, do come along and follow me. I'd love to see you. And I am, Writing.ie has tons of stuff. Sam Blake, I have my own website, obviously, which is samblakebooks.com. So there's news on there, but social tends to be where it's, there's more stuff that's coming through constantly. Writing.ie is updated daily with stuff. I have a fantastic editor who looks after that. So
it's brilliant.
And we're always looking for material for Writing.ie too. So if any of your guys have books and they've got books coming out and they need a bit of a push, drop me an email and I can tell you what we're looking for. Because we've got sections for everybody. If people have got events or they've got launches, there's an event section Writing.ie, and they can put stuff in there. I think it's pretty empty at the moment because I keep forgetting to tell people it's there, but it's on the homepage. So, put your events in there if you're doing a reading or if you're doing whatever it is, anything, right?
Yeah.
Stick it in there. Yeah.
Brilliant. And that's okay to just email. Is it, what's the email again?
So it's Vanessa@writing.ie.
Okay.
Just confuse everybody with the names for Writing.ie. And find me an email and I can tell you what we're looking for, what we need. I just need to know a bit about the book. And then in terms of the events section, people can just put their own events in.
Brilliant.
I have to approve it all, obviously, but it's but they can just pop along to the site and do that.
No, that's brilliant to know. And thank you obviously for your support. I know you published an article for me before, which was brilliant. And that's really nice that that's an option for anyone starting.
It gets to a lot of people. So we have about, I don't know, I think we have, different months vary, but it can be between 60,000-70,000 views a month to 100, so there's a lot of people coming through from all over the world, and then obviously we share it across our social, which is considerable too. So and
I noticed you're actually quite high in the SEO search as well.
Yeah, we would be, because it's a niche domain, so it's and it's been around for so long. There are so many links coming in and out. So.
No, it's brilliant. Well, look, Sam, thank you so much for such a great conversation. I know it will help a lot of people. And it's been lovely just to hear actually your story, because I noticed you do a lot of interviews on other authors, actually big authors. But I'm actually privileged to be able to do it the other way around and hear a bit about you, and all that advice is really valuable. So,
well, thank you so much for having me. No, I love talking to people. So it's great. I'm interviewing Cecilia Hearn pretty soon. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's the Dublin Writers
Festival. So, and then we've got Murder One coming up too, which is, we've got about 8 events planned for that through we're doing the DLR libraries. It'll all be online. And in fact, I think the whole Zoom thing is great. Like this is brilliant because you're getting this out to so many more people than can come and listen to us in a room. So great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, and best of luck. Is your 6th novel coming out?
So The Dark Room is book number 5. Yeah, that's out in shops now, and the paperback's coming out in November. And High Pressure is book number 6, which is now going to be coming out in digital in September.
The digital one,
for the Kindle readers. And then I have another book coming out in January called Remember My Name, which will be in print and be in all the shops. So
okay, so you'll be busy.
Yeah, that's all a bit mad at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, look, I look forward to keeping in touch, and seeing your next book come out.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck with it.